They're handmade, so there's a little bit of difference between each one when it's thrown. It's not made from a mold or a machine, so there will be some variation in height and width. But I try and start with the same amount of clay each time to keep the size as consistent as possible with handmade pottery. This third step is called pulling the walls, and this is the magic of the clay. This is what lets you see just how elastic that porcelain clay body is. You can make chopsticks between your fingers on the inside and the outside, and you just stretch that clay skyward. The importance is to keep your fingers the same distance apart so you have nice even walls all the way straight up. You have to use a lot of water to decrease the friction so that your hands don't stick and the clay will move. But when you get to the last step, the shaping step, you need to take all the water out so that it'll be stiff enough to hold the shape that you want to give it. And these tall cylinders are a real challenge to throw. Clay wants to lay flat and be short. It doesn't want to grow way tall up off the base. You have to really watch your wheel speed so you don't go too fast and flare this thing out. The throwing of a piece of pottery is just the first step. This is probably the most romantic and fun step. It takes about 2 weeks to take a piece of clay and turn it into something usable, like a mug. This is an optional step, but I really like to do it because you can compare the difference between these two bottoms. This one with the foot trimmed in is nice and balanced. I've burnished it, polished it, so it's very smooth. It won't chip or scratch any type of surface. So the trimming, some potters do it, some potters don't. I like it because I think it's a lot like woodworking. Just kind of whittle away at that bottom. Refine that shape. Balance and lighten the piece. I call this the zen of pottery. To me, this is extremely relaxing. You just put on some good Bob Marley and Jimmy Buffett. And just kind of rock out. While it slowly takes shape. And by giving it that ring, see, it's going to balance it right there, and carving out a little bit from the mill, a little extra clay you have down there, lightens the piece as well. And then I hand sign every piece and put Alaska, so people know that it's made right here in Alaska. The texture for all of these comes from seashells that I got beachcombing down on the Kenai Peninsula. And so a little broken shell becomes the texture for the big fin. And another shell will give some of the other fins if we roll it. And I like to use all the different sides, so if you take the edge here, that becomes the gill. And if you take the top, that becomes that little fin that goes in there. Eyeballs.
How cute.
And then the last thing, just give it a little bit of texture by hand. And this way it'll hug that soap or that spoon in order to define his tail, the difference between his tail and his foot, and give it an optional hanging spot. I have this little punch, and then I save that because it's going to become his nose. Again, I use seashells to texture. Before I add the nose, I'm going to give him some whiskers and define his mouth. That little teardrop becomes a little Groucho Marx nose. And this is just some woodworking tools. One of the neat things about the seashell is that it has all different sides. So in order to make a shell that looks like this, I can't just press this in. I've got to use all those sides. So I'm going to roll it on the back. I'm going to step it on the top. And then I'm going to use the teeth edge to define it. Now it looks like that shell. And then he needs a couple hands to hug that shell. So I just start with a rectangle and round that a little bit. To wrap it around so it becomes more like an arm and smooth it into place. Wrap it around and smooth it into place. Then he needs some claws so he doesn't lose hold of his prey. Take that same seashell, just use a different part of it, and there's his little claws hugging it. Then I like to define the belly, so again you've got a little bit of a drainage or a resting spot for the spoon. And give him a slight rounded shape so that it'll hold that soap or that spoon.